It's PDX Guitar Freak, and welcome to my lesson on how to play both solos from Van Halen's classic, I'm the One. Now, before we get started, it's really important that you tune your guitar down 1/2 step, as we always do when we play Van Halen songs. E becomes E flat, A becomes A flat, D becomes D flat, etc. Now, I know oftentimes I like to talk about music theory at the beginning of the video. This song is kind of classic Van Halen. It's all over the place, so he kind of throws all of the rules out the window. So I'll talk a little bit about that as we move through each section. So let's go ahead and start with solo 1. So section 1 really doesn't take a lot of explanation, but here it is slowly with no effects. Here it is again. You can see there's a lot of palm muting going on there. If you want, you can probably palm mute the whole thing. You're going to have to do a lot of palm muting to get the right tone or the right sound. And there's really not a lot to explain there. Just keep practicing it until you get it to the right speed. In terms of musical theory there, in the background, Michael Anthony on the bass is playing in B. And it's almost like, I don't know, the best way to describe it is probably like B Dorin with adding the major third. Because, I mean, repeating this pattern up these 3 strings, you just don't see that in any formal scale. It's just Eddie being Eddie. Here's section 2 of solo 1 slowly. A couple things I want to point out there. If you notice the tabs, here's the thing. With this section, you just need to feel it, right? If Eddie was to play this again, he's going to play it a little bit differently every time. He just feels it. He calls it falling down the stairs. You know where you're starting, you know where you're ending, and in between, it's just you kind of let it happen. Okay? So I think the one thing that's kind of weird about this one is you'll notice that when I hit the 6th fret of the G string, I'm hitting it. I'm not picking it. I'm just hammering onto it. Okay? So watch. See that? And after he does that hammer on to the 6th fret of the G string, he goes. And you'll notice when I tap, I hold the pick right here. Okay? And what that allows me to do is I can actually pick notes. I'm picking a note there with the pick. Okay? So after I hammer onto the 6th fret of the G string, I've still got my pick in that planted position, and then I hit the 4th fret of the B string, and then I hit the 6th fret of the G string while I'm holding the pick. And that's what works for me. If you want, you can also use your finger, your tapping finger, to pluck the string to sound it like this. Do what works best for you. And you'll notice also the last thing I want to mention about this section, well, not the last, but I'll get there, is after I do that, you do that quick pull off to the open G. That's not something that I think Eddie did intentionally. It's just part of the solo. That's how it came out while he was kind of winging it. I guess the last thing I want to say is, again, from a theoretical standpoint, this is Eddie's take on a classic kind of, blues turnaround kind of thing, right? That kind of thing. So, classic Eddie right there. The next section of solo 1 he does some what's called unison bends, and that's where you plant your finger on one string, and then on the adjacent string you bend up to hit the same note, like that. So he does a pattern like this. And then, finally, when he gets up here, he's on the 21st fret of the B string. He does a two-step bend, which is bending from here to here. So, and then slides down. That section, pretty self-explanatory. There's really not much more I can say about that one. The next section, slowly. Now, you'll notice I was picking those 12th fret notes a lot in there. You're really not supposed to pick them, but when you play it slow, it's hard to keep it sustaining, so I end up doing that. And actually, sometimes when I'm playing it live, I'll do that too. But really, you just want to keep bending and doing pull-offs and hammer-ons to do it like, let me do it again slowly. See how I'm starting to lose the note there because my guitar's not sustaining enough. You know, Eddie's probably playing this at, well, you know, on the first album it was louder than shit, right? So one thing you can do, when you're playing fast, usually you can keep the notes going. But one thing you can do, again, is you can pick some of the notes. It's up to you. And in terms of the theory for that section, really it's, for the most part, it's kind of in a D minor pentatonic, but he adds in the major third. So bluesy kind of thing. Not much more to explain there. Although the way Eddie does it, it's kind of different from the way you see most people incorporate the major third. Then the last section for solo 1 goes like this, slowly. And that one, again, kind of classic type of blues lick where again he's adding the major third. The trick to that one, you can see in the tabs I'm saying there, it's a pre-bent type of lick. And you may have seen me do this before in other Van Halen. I think it was in the Bottoms Up solo. He does that pre-bend thing where basically you're bending up on one string and then you're bending down on another. So here's how it works. And this is where he's bending up at the 13th fret of the B string. And you're going to want to use your pinky to bend up on the 13th fret at this one. So what you do is you bend up at that 13th fret, and on the way up, you're naturally going to be grabbing the G string right behind there. So when you're at the top of the bend, you let go of the B string, hit the G string, and bring it down. So does that make sense? You're pulling up on the B string, 13th fret. So underneath it, you've got your ring finger. Naturally on the 12th fret of the G string, you're hitting the G string note, coming down. Now, in order to stop the notes from blending, what I typically do is when I'm at the top of that bend with the 13th fret, I'll take my middle finger, and as soon as I hit the 12th fret of the G string, this finger, the middle finger, stops the B string. Like here, look closely. See my middle finger coming into play? Takes a while to get used to, but once you can do it, it's kind of fun. And that's going to show up later in solo 2, so get that one down. So here's section 1 of solo 2, slowly. What? No, bad dog, get out of here. Go, get out. Sorry about that. Again, here's section 1 of solo 2, slowly. And a couple of things I want to point out here. There's a few notes that I see people skip a lot when they're playing this. You can see I'm highlighting them right now. There's the seventh. The first time you see the 7th fret on the B string, and the last time you see the 7th fret on the B string. People often skip those notes, and they'll go like this. And that's totally fine if you want to do it that way. Those notes happen so quickly, most people aren't going to notice. But I can tell you, most of the tabs that I've seen include those notes. Not that tabs are always right, but in addition, when I listen to the isolated guitar solo track, I can hear those notes. They're there. Okay, so either way, you should be fine. And other than that, the rest of the tabs should be pretty self-explanatory. Last thing I want to mention is that open B note after the bends, after the, that is there. That's there in the song. Oftentimes people often skip that. Don't know if Eddie did that intentionally or if it was a happy accident, but it's there. Here's section 2 of solo 2, slowly. Again, slowly. And you can see that I broke the tab up into little sections. I did that so it would be easier for you to see how it all comes together. It's easier for me to explain this way. So think of it as a couple different sections. So in the first one, we do that bend up at the 10th fret of the B string, which takes you to the note B, and then you play the 7th fret of the high E string, which is a B note. So, and oftentimes what I'll see people do, as opposed to doing that, instead they'll simply play the 7th fret of the high E string 3 times in the same time frame, like this. So instead of, they'll go, that's the easier way to do it. So if you're having, for some reason, whatever, you're having trouble doing that, fitting that bend in there, etc., you can do the alternate way. The next part of this section, very straightforward, goes like this. And so if you combine the first part of that and the second part of this section, it's like this. And if you want to do it the alternate way that I was talking about, it would be like this. Again, both ways will work, but the bend, having the bend in there, that's actually the real way to do it. And then it goes, followed by, and then, so again, very straightforward. It might take you some time to, that's called tremolo picking, by the way, when you're on one string and you do that. And Eddie, oftentimes when he picks it, instead of doing it like this, he'll kind of arch his hand a little bit, which makes it a little more relaxed. So, it does help. I found that over time, when I first saw Eddie do that, I thought it looked really funny. So I avoided it. But I found that over time, I see myself doing that occasionally because it makes your hand more feel more natural. I guess this movement for most guys is pretty natural, right? So do whatever works for you. The next section, slowly. This one, I'm not sure there's really much to explain. You just have to practice it till you get the right speed. And one thing I want to point out is that in a lot of the tabs, they'll show, instead of just sliding up to the 14th fret at the beginning like this, they'll show him slide up to the 13th and then the 14th before hitting that 12th fret E note. Like, I don't hear that, okay? I don't hear that at all. To me, it sounds like he's just sliding up to the 14th. But it's kind of a slow slide, relatively speaking, so he's hitting that 13th note on the way to the 14th. You know, but whatever. This next section, again, very straightforward. Here it is slowly. Really not much to explain there, although I will say that when I do that at the end, a lot of the tabs, including the official tabs, show that it's actually the 16th fret of the G string that he's sliding down. But when I listen to the isolated guitar track, it doesn't sound like he's really hitting that note. He may be sliding down from that point, but don't worry about that. Just slide down and it's going to sound just fine. The last part slowly. And again, this is that pre-bend type of lick that we showed you at the end of section 1. And in this case, you pull up at the 15th fret of the B string, and on the way up, you're catching the G string. And then when you at the top of that bend, you hit you pull off your pinky from the B string. So now you're fretting the 14th fret of the G string. Hit the note, bring it down. But to be honest, that's the way I see it tabbed a lot. But when I listen carefully to the isolated guitar track, it sounds like at the top of that bend, he hits that 14th fret of the G string, and then it barely comes down, and then he does the vibrato and slide down. So have fun with that one. I think, either way, if you want to bring it all the way down or bring it down partly, you're going to be fine. Oh, last thing I want to mention is at the very end, it's interesting because I used to always just go, and then I was looking at the official tabs and it showed he was playing 12th fret, the last part of it, the 12th fret of the A, 14th fret of the D, like a chord. And I thought, I've never done it that way. I went back and listened to the isolated guitar track. Sure enough, that's what Eddie's doing. Alright, that's my video on how to play both solos from Van Halen's classic, I'm the One. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and put them down below and I'll answer them as time allows. Hey, and if you forgot, I'm doing a 20,000 subscriber Q&A. I'll do a follow-up video soon, so if you have any questions, anything you want to know, go ahead and ask me and I'll answer everything. Alright, until next time, rock on.